In the bustling tech hub of Austin, Texas, where sleek startups and glass-walled offices defined the skyline, Clara Monroe was a woman who slipped through the cracks. At 38, she was wiry, with dark hair pulled into a practical bun, her wardrobe a collection of thrift store staples, faded slacks, a slightly frayed blouse and scuffed flats. Clara worked as a part-time library assistant and cleaned Airbnb rentals on weekends, her hands rough from scrubbing counters and shelving books. To Austin's affluent tech crowd, she was invisible, her life as unassuming as her attire. As they looked at her clothes and laughed, the interview panel at Nexus Innovations would later recall, their voices heavy with regret. On a sweltering July morning, the company's headquarters, a modern complex with open-plan workspaces and rooftop gardens, was abuzz with candidates vying for a project coordinator position. Nexus, a rising star in sustainable tech, was known for its competitive hiring process, drawing polished graduates and seasoned professionals in tailored suits. Clara had applied on a whim, encouraged by her friend Mia, a barista who'd seen the job listing online. Yes, you've got the skills, Mia had insisted, her optimism infectious. You're organised, you're smart. Go for it. Clara, who'd never worked in tech, pieced together a resume from her years of managing library programs and rental schedules. She arrived at Nexus in her best outfit, a second-hand blouse and slacks, clutching a worn leather satchel that had belonged to her mother. Her heart pounded as she stepped into the lobby, the air-conditioned space a stark contrast to the humid Austin streets. As she waited, a group of candidates nearby, young professionals in crisp blazers, glanced at her and snickered. Did she wander in from a thrift shop? One whispered, a woman named Ashley with a sleek laptop bag. Another, a man named Derek, chuckled. Hope she's here to clean the office, not apply. Their laughter echoed in the sleek lobby, drawing smirks from others. Clara's cheeks flushed, but her hazel eyes, sharp and steady, carrying the weight of a life forged in resilience, remained fixed on the reception desk. She was used to being underestimated. Growing up in a small town outside Houston, Clara had lost her parents young, her father to a factory accident, her mother to illness. Raised by her aunt, a librarian who taught her to find strength in books, Clara had dreamed of college but worked instead, supporting her aunt through cancer. She'd moved to Austin at 20, raising her younger sister, Emma, on a shoestring budget. Now, with Emma in college, Clara poured her energy into small acts of kindness, organising free library workshops, helping neighbours with errands, and writing poetry in a battered journal. Her strength wasn't in her clothes or her resume. It was in her heart, a fire that burned quietly. When her name was called, Clara stood, smoothing her blouse. The panel, 3 executives in polished attire, barely looked up as she entered the conference room. Ashley, who'd been interviewed earlier, lingered outside, whispering to Derek, "She won't last 5 minutes." But Clara's eyes held a spark, and the satchel she carried was about to change everything. The conference room was stark, its glass table reflecting the panel's skeptical faces. The lead interviewer, Patricia Wells, a no-nonsense VP of operations, scanned Clara's resume with a raised eyebrow. "Miss Monroe, your experience is unconventional," she said, her tone clipped. "A library work, cleaning. Why do you think you're qualified for Nexus?" Clara's hands rested on her satchel, her voice steady. "I've spent years organising programmes, managing budgets, and solving problems under pressure. I may not have a degree, but I know how to make things work." The second panellist, Ryan Carter, a tech-led, smirked. "This role requires innovation. What can someone like you bring to a cutting-edge company?" His eyes flicked to her worn blouse, his dismissal clear. Clara didn't flinch. "Innovation isn't just tech," she said. "It's finding solutions with what you have. I've done that my whole life." She opened her satchel, pulling out a thin, weathered notebook. "May I show you something?" Patricia nodded, more out of curiosity than expectation. Clara placed the notebook on the table. revealing pages filled with meticulous diagrams, sketches of community projects she designed for the library, like a mobile book bus powered by solar panels and a rainwater collection system for a local park. The final page held a proposal she'd written years ago, a plan to connect Austin's underserved communities with free tech training, complete with cost estimates and timelines. The panel leaned forward, stunned. The third member, Elena Ruiz, a sustainability director, traced a finger over a solar panel sketch. "This is impressive," she said. "Where did you learn this?" Clara's eyes softened, a flicker of pain beneath her calm. "My aunt was a librarian. She taught me to read, to think, to build. I didn't go to college, but I never stopped learning." Patricia's demeanour shifted. "This notebook, it's yours?" she asked, flipping through the pages. "Yes," Clara said. "It's what I carry. Ideas, plans, dreams." The room was silent, the panel's earlier skepticism replaced by awe. Olze looked at her clothes and laughed. Elena later said, "But they should have looked at her eyes instead." Outside, Ashley and Derek overheard whispers of Clara's presentation, their smugness fading. Clara didn't get the job immediately. The panel needed time to process, but her notebook sparked a fire. Elena, who'd grown up in a working-class family, pushed to create a new role, community innovation liaison, tailored to Clara's skills. Days later, Patricia called Clara back, offering the position winner. "Hey, your ideas belong here," she said. "We want you to lead community projects." Clara accepted, stunned but determined. Word of her interview spread, amplified by Mia, who shared the story with local bloggers. The Austin Chronicle ran a piece titled "The Satchel That Shocked Nexus," detailing Clara's designs and her overlooked brilliance. The article mentioned her past, raising her sister alone, organising library programmes on a shoestring, and teaching herself engineering basics from borrowed books. At a company town hall, Elena shared Clara's story, displaying her notebook sketches on a screen. The employees, including Ashley and Derek, listened in silence. "We almost missed her," Elena said. Her clothes didn't tell her story. Her eyes did. Ashley, humbled, approached Clara afterward. "You was wrong," she said, her voice low. "I laughed at you. I'm sorry." Clara nodded, her smile gentle. "It's okay. I'm used to it. Just glad I got a chance to show what I can do." Clara's role at Nexus transformed the company's outreach. Her mobile book bus, now funded and built, brought tech workshops to Austin's low-income neighbourhoods. Her rainwater system was adopted by local parks, earning Nexus praise for sustainability. Her poetry, shared online, inspired employees and residents, its themes of resilience resonating widely. The community rallied around her. Parents whose kids attended her workshops thanked her, and local businesses donated supplies. Derek, now a colleague, volunteered for her projects, his earlier judgment replaced by respect. Clara kept her library job part-time, her life grounded in simplicity. A quiet romance bloomed with Elena, who admired Clara's heart and shared her passion for change. They bonded over late-night planning sessions, their connection built on mutual respect. Clara enrolled in night classes, pursuing an engineering degree, her satchel still carrying her dreams. At Nexus's annual gala, Clara spoke, her voice steady. "They looked at my clothes and laughed," she said, her hazel eyes bright. "They should have looked at my eyes instead. I'm just a woman with ideas, but what I carried showed me we're all more than we seem." 3 years after Clara Monroe walked into Nexus Innovations with her worn satchel and changed the course of her life, Austin, Texas, had come to know her as more than a library assistant in faded slacks. Her role as community innovation liaison had transformed Nexus's outreach, with her mobile book bus now serving 5 low-income neighborhoods, bringing tech workshops and free books to kids who reminded Clara of her younger self. Her rainwater collection systems were installed in 10 city parks, earning Nexus National Awards for sustainability. Her poetry collection, Unseen Light, was a local bestseller, It's verses about resilience and quiet strength quoted in community centres and coffee shops. Yet Clara remained grounded, still shelving books part-time at the library, still cleaning rentals on weekends, her thrift store cardigan and scuffed flats as familiar as her hazel eyes, which burned with a fire no one could overlook. They looked at her clothes and laughed. Nexus employees often said, recounting the interview that had become company law. They should have looked at her eyes instead. That moment, when Clara's notebook of sketches silenced a skeptical panel, was now a story told to new hires, a reminder of the power of unseen potential. But fame, even on a local scale, was a weight Clara hadn't sought. One humid September morning, as Clara led a workshop at a community centre, teaching teens to build solar chargers from recycled parts, a visitor arrived. Dr. Samantha Lee, a program director from the National Green Tech Alliance in San Francisco, had read about Clara's projects and wanted her to keynote their annual conference. "Your work is a model for community-driven innovation," Samantha said, her polished demeanour a contrast to Clara's frayed blouse. "You're proof that solutions don't need fancy degrees, just vision. We'd love you to speak in Seattle, share your story." Clara set down a screwdriver, her eyes wary. "I'm not a speaker," she said, her voice steady but cautious. "I do this for the people here, not for big stages." Samantha smiled, undeterred. "That's why you're perfect. You're authentic. People need to hear from someone who's lived it." Elena Ruiz, Clara's partner and Nexus's sustainability director, who'd been helping a student nearby, joined them. "She's right, Clara," Elena said, her dark eyes warm with encouragement. "You've already changed Austin. You could inspire so many more." Clara's fingers brushed the satchel on the table, the same one she'd carried to her interview, now holding new sketches and poems. She thought of that day at Nexus, the laughter, the skepticism, the silence when her notebook revealed her worth. She'd faced judgment before and turned it into purpose. But a national conference, with its crowds of experts and media, felt like a leap into uncharted territory. Her eyes met Elena's, her resolve softening. "I'll think about it," she said finally, "but I'm not wearing a suit." That evening, in their small apartment near Austin's East Side, Clara and Elena sat over a pot of tea, their ritual for tough decisions. Their romance, built on shared ideals and quiet moments, had grown into a partnership that anchored Clara. Her sister Emma, now a college graduate working as a graphic designer, had texted her support earlier, thrilled about the conference invite. "What if I mess this up?" Clara asked, her journal open to a half-finished poem. "Those people, they're not like me. They've got credentials, big titles." Elena leaned forward, her hand covering Clara's. "You've got something better. Heart. You built a bus that's changing lives, designed systems that save water, raised Emma on nothing." "That's what they need to see." Clara's eyes softened, her aunt's words echoing in her mind. "You're enough, Clara, just as you are," she nodded. "Okay," she said, "but I'm bringing my satchel." The National Green Tech Conference was held in a sleek Seattle convention center, its glass walls reflecting the Puget Sound. Clara arrived in her thrift store cardigan and slacks, her satchel slung over her shoulder. The audience, engineers, activists and policymakers, whispered as she walked through the crowd, some noting her simple attire. They looked at her clothes and laughed. A few murmured, their tones more curious than mocking. But Clara's hazel eyes, sharp with purpose, silenced their doubts. On stage, Samantha introduced her with a video montage. Clips of Clara teaching kids to wire circuits, her book bus parked in Austin's barrios, and park sprinklers powered by her rainwater systems. "A Clara Monroe," Samantha said, "a woman who turned hardship into innovation." The audience applauded, but Clara stood quietly, her hands steady on her satchel. She spoke simply, her Texas accent grounding her words. "I'm not here because I'm special," she began. "I'm here because I know what it's like to be invisible, working 2 jobs, raising my sister, learning from books because college wasn't an option." but I found solutions in what I had. She shared stories of her projects, a teen who'd built a solar charger for his family, a park that stayed green through droughts, a community that found pride in learning. She opened her satchel, pulling out her notebook, and showed a new sketch, a modular tech lab for rural schools. She read a poem about resilience, its lines raw and vivid, leaving the room hushed. When she finished, the silence was profound, broken by a standing ovation. Samantha, tears in her eyes, hugged Clara. "You've given us a roadmap," she said. Backstage, attendees approached, sharing stories of their own struggles, inspired by Clara's honesty. Ashley, now a Nexus colleague, was there, her earlier mockery replaced by admiration. "I misjudged you," she said. "You're changing everything." The conference brought a surge of support for Clara's projects, with grants and partnerships from universities and non-profits. But growth brought challenges. A corporate sponsor, Ecotech Solutions, offered a multi-million-dollar grant to scale her book bus nationally, but their terms included branding it as a corporate initiative, sidelining Clara's community focus. At a tense meeting in Austin, their representative, Mark Jensen, dismissed her concerns. "You're an inspiration, Miss Monroe, but you're not a planner," he said. Clara's eyes flashed. "This isn't about branding," she said. "It's about people who need tools, not logos." Elena backed her, citing data on the bus's impact. They rejected the grant, choosing smaller, community-driven funding instead. The decision strained Nexus's resources, but Clara leaned into her work, training volunteers and refining designs. Her evenings with Elena, sketching plans and revising poems, kept her grounded. "You're my home," she told Elena one night, her smile soft. 5 years later, Clara's book bus operated in 15 states, and her rainwater systems were adopted by cities nationwide. Her poetry inspired a scholarship fund, and her workshops empowered thousands. Clara, now with an engineering degree, worked as a consultant, her designs shaping sustainable communities. She kept her library job part-time, her life simple, her love with Elena a quiet anchor. At a national sustainability summit, Clara spoke to a crowd of thousands. "They laughed at my clothes," she said, her hazel eyes bright. "They should have looked at my eyes instead. I'm just a woman with a satchel, but what I carried showed me we're all more than we seem." The crowd stood, silent, then roared. Clara Monroe, mocked at a job interview, had shocked the panel with what she carried and changed a nation with her heart.